Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Wake Up Missoula. I'm your host, Scott Ramp, here to usher you in to March 20th. It is Friday. We're kind of in mid-March area. The spring equinox was yesterday, so the kickoff of spring was just yesterday, just in time for that really nice warm weather happening. It really was up to the mid-60s last night, and we're expecting temperatures to only get more and more hotter and hotter as we go into the summer. So as you know, as I'm talking, the city had no committee meetings this week, and they spoke mostly about their Monday meeting, which was notoriously short. And so, part of this is that sometimes I'm really grasping at straws here for some of the footage and whatnot. So I have a very short show for you guys overall, but I'm going to get right through it for you right now. So Jen Worrell kicks off the neighborhood reports from Franklin to the Fort, and this is just talking about some of the things that are happening, especially I get some other informational stuff about this as well. So.
Just a couple of updates. One of our local residents developed a proposal for a pocket park on 6th Street. They've submitted an application for funding through the neighborhood grant program. We have provided a letter of support for the project, as it would bring meaningful improvements to an underutilized area of the neighborhood. And the neighborhood grant program is still in process, so we'll look forward to that. Secondly, our general meeting is approaching. We're hoping to have it in April, towards the end of the month, but we're still finalizing the dates. We do plan to invite city council members to attend for a Q&A session if possible, and we'll share more information once the date is confirmed. And then we're also planning on hosting 2 ice cream socials this summer later on in the year. In years past, we had done block parties in conjunction with another organization, but we're not doing that this year. We're going to do some little smaller events. And then finally, we just wanted to express our support for the recently approved zoning and code reform project, and we look forward to expanding housing opportunities created for our neighborhood and hope for the potential for additional open space options.
Okay, and so like she mentioned, there's the grants program, which is a very important part of many neighborhoods. So a neighborhood grant essentially means that the city of Missoula has earmarked about $35,000. It used to be $20,000 before Danner Carlino advocated and amended it to increase it to $35,000 for basic neighborhood improvements. You have calming circles, gardens, parklets, which is like miniature parks that the neighborhoods kind of help and control. They host the regular meetings inside the cafe at Rose Hours. And, I'm in the Franklin to the Fort neighborhood, so I'm a little bit biased on this, and they usually have their ice cream socials in the Franklin Park near the Franklin School for their community events. So these are the folks that are help get a series of calming circles in place at intersections and that lack signage. Neighborhood grants are a great way to spend up the $35,000, like I said, for this particular for projects in neighborhoods who are looking to install signs, plots for gardens, pocket parks, urban gardens like Garden City Harvest, advocating for a lot of different things and working with many nonprofits. But there is a nonprofit out there in Missoula that handles over 20 farms, including peas farms. Plots are always open for folks to plant whatever they like, and 'tis the season to really start those garden projects that you've been thinking about. Of course, March 18th was Transit Operation Day, which celebrates those who operate the buses here in town, especially Mountain Line. And since 2015, Missoula has been fare free, so anybody can just jump on the bus and ride it for free. And here's Jordan Hess with Mountain Line talking a little bit more about this Appreciation Day.
And Mountain Line really is about connecting people to opportunities. So we connect veterans to employment, we connect seniors to social opportunities and medical appointments, we connect students to school, we help young people be independent and achieve independence and give their parents a little independence as well through that, and we help people age in place and stay in their homes. All of that work goes on 361 days a year and is a labor of love for our employees. We've got about 125 professionals that work at Mountain Line, 72 of which are operators that drive buses and paratransit vans and help people get to where they need to be in the community.
All right. And so what Missoula is definitely one of few places in the nation, I think one of 3 places that actually have fare free. And so far they have 50% electric buses and looking to overhaul, have those buses ready by 2035 to be fully electric. 26 out of the 29 buses have electric engines, and many bus drivers like the lack of diesel emissions bellowing from their buses. All week, the Mountain Line are celebrating their drivers and operators this week, and so the 18th was Operators Day proclamation, but Mountain Line's been celebrating it all week. So public comment pretty much wrapped up this meeting, and Brian O'Leary spoke about the pesticide use in parks. So frankly, it seems like the main public comments that are coming up to these meetings on a more persistent measure are people who are against pesticides, making sure that we have a clean and livable environment, and folks that are very concerned about the housing here in Missoula, making sure that we use our lands properly for affordability. So Brian O'Leary spoke about the pesticide use in parks, and this is what he had to say.
Grateful to see that the new Parks Director has called for more use of sustainable land care practices. It's a step in the right direction, but now the council needs to do the right thing so that we stop poisoning parks and the people. While I was gathering my thoughts the other day, I came across a photo of my 2 children sitting in the grass at the Clark Fork Market. And in the background, there was a picture of, in the background of the photo, there was somebody standing on the Higgins Street Bridge with a sign protesting the use of pesticides in city parks. My kids were 9 and 7 in those photos. They're now 22 and 20. And the ball has not moved any farther down the field on this issue. There's been constant excuses, delays, we can't afford this, we can't afford that. And I think it's time for the foot dragging to stop. It's time for the council to act and stop the use of herbicides and pesticides in the city parks. And absent that, I urge the public to seek and support new political leadership that will act to protect public health.
All right, so some scathing remarks against the city council not moving forward with alternative uses for the lawns and landscape care of most of our city parks. From last week, we got to see Parks and Rec Director Marina Yokoshina spoke about herbicide use in McCormick Park. They try to do like a rotating thing. I actually got a chance to speak to her in person, and she basically said that they're trying to add herbicide, but not at the point of replacing pesticides, as they plan to transition those in various parks across Missoula. It's not an overnight thing that they're trying to do, but it is something that they're trying to ease into on their Parks and Rec. But also, it has to do with a lot of budgetary constraints through the city of Missoula. So Suzette Dussault comes back again through public comment talking about housing, and this is what she had to say a little bit more about that.
The city and county should use the tools that they have to reflect the values of the citizens they serve, and to protect critical lands and natural resources, to enhance the valued characteristics of our communities. I'm believing that's meaning the individual characteristics of neighborhoods, to protect and reinforce our right to a clean and healthful environment, as in our Montana Constitution, and that long-term economic stability, which housing would bring to our community, and a high-quality living environment should not be sacrificed for short-term economic gain. And so with this document, I believe that you have the tools to bring to the critical issue of housing.
All right. So part of this has to do with the fact that, Midtown Commons is such a hotly contested issue in Missoula, and like the property at the Fox Triangle, the city is essentially using that property to help generate money that goes into the Affordable Housing Fund. And part of that is basically the sale of land, and then using that money to be used in another project for affordable housing. While on the other hand, a lot of the folks like Suzette is very concerned about the idea that we have the land, why not build affordable housing on the land that we can leverage for affordable housing, like we did with the Varvara project. MRA has spoken many times on this particular recommendation, saying that they limit and have lack of resources to be able to do that kind of Varvara Northside Scott Street project like they did in the past, because they were during the pandemic, there were a lot of housing programs put into place that helped put a lot of these projects over the top to get them finished. But now we're living in a very weird kind of deficit place where a lot of the money is going in all sorts of directions except for in the communities in the United States. So Mayor Andrea Davis, during comments by the mayor, spoke about the Missoula Muslim community, about some of her experiences being invited to one of their dinners.
They are recognizing and celebrating Ramadan, a very important holiday, Muslim holiday, and this was an opportunity for me to be welcomed into this community and literally share food, break bread. And it was just incredibly, the hospitality, the graciousness, and the excitement by these new Missoulians, some new, some old. I mean, some of these folks that are part of the Missoula Islamic Society have been living here for decades. Many have come here to work for, the language program at the university, training our special operatives in the Army, for example, right? When they go over and serve in the military and work in Afghanistan, for example.
Yep. And, the University of Montana is a big proponent of having a lot of these classes, and they did a lot of ROCT education training. Education never touched on Muslim religion or otherwise outside of Malcolm X when I was growing up in the 90s, because the idea of, Muslim religion and stuff was not exposed to a lot of, public education in general. No surprise there. But in the 90s, the closest thing we ever got to any kind of education about Muslims was Malcolm X. But that was only a brief thing, as he was an advocate for African Americans in the United States. But not to get too sentimental, but one of the things is that many of the things that a lot of these military grants really expanded in the early 2000s because of the Iraq War, of a choice that kept people gaslit about weapons of mass destruction that informed decisions in the current administration, which is actively losing support on this particular war choice in Iran. But of course, I don't want to get into that too far. But we're going to go into some council comments. Stacey Anderson, City Council, spoke about the looky-loos around down power lines during last week's snow event. So this is what she had to say about that.
If you see a giant fire truck and there's caution tape around, maybe go around. There was a lot of down power lines and folks were like, hey, what's going on over there? And so it just, they don't do that for their own fun. They're actually trying to encourage people to be safe and just use some common sense and give people a wide berth to do their work. So, and that will also be the case if we end up with a flooding situation. Watch, for standing water and pay attention to the cautions and just avoid it if you can.
All right, so that was Stacey Anderson kind of just saying that let the service folks do their job, trying to get everything all done and something like that. But, it's the idea of look, something interesting happening over there. Let's run towards it. Basically sums up the worst decision you're about to make. But speaking of mistakes, I'm going to actually throw it over to some footage of a car chase climax that was rotated online on social media that happened basically last kind of early evening kind of time in the afternoon here on the Bear Track Higgins Bridge. And so somebody on TikTok literally just posted the aftermath of the guy getting arrested on the street. So here's a little taste of that. And as you can kind of see here, he's driving the sedan. He came from Ravalli County, had a warrant for $250,000 for his arrest. So this was something I found reposted on Reddit, seen the guy seen there as well. And, yeah, just the amount of police presence and just kind of stuff getting stopped. But he was considered armed and dangerous at the time of his arrest. So there's definitely some crazy stuff going on there. And, speaking of just kind of getting out of there, if you watch at the very beginning of the video right over here, you can kind of see that there's a Jeep right there, essentially just being like, I got to get out of here. Very much coded in a way to be like, yeah, I don't want to see that happening here. But yeah, that's some crazy stuff. But KPAX basically wrote a story about it. There isn't too much identifying the suspect at this time. All they know is that they had a arrest warrant from Ravalli County, and there was a car chase where they refused to stop, and so they used a grappler system in one of the vehicles to essentially stop the tires in their track. essentially stopped it. KPAX basically just did a story about their grappling system more than just the person that they caught. So it was pretty interesting to see that. But of course, speaking of mistakes people make, it's just one of those things, decisions. If you're disposing of tree matter or plants, the city posted some information posts as spring. Sorry, the transition's terrible. But speaking of some of those decisions people make, it is springtime, and if you're looking to do some spring cleaning, disposing of any plant matter that kind of fell from the trees during the summer, during the winter times with the snow and the winds, they have some informational stuff for folks still kind of suffering from the winds of the summer of 2024. And just because the trees are still standing doesn't mean they haven't been damaged in some form or capacity. So Missoula property owners are responsible for disposing of tree branches, leaves, and other green waste from their private property. So please remember, do not place yard debris in streets or public right-of-ways. Use proper disposal options for green waste. Keep storm drains clear to prevent clogging and protect waterways. Placing debris in the streets creates safety hazards for drivers, cyclists, and pedestrians, and can delay city crews who are focused on maintaining public trees and essential infrastructure. City crews are not responsible for collecting debris from private properties. If your city-owned boulevard trees are located near sidewalks on the city streets, you are responsible for those trees, and you can actually fill out an online application for tree service request, not for the trees like in your backyard, but if you have trees near the public right-of-way on boulevards, by the sidewalks, and are potentially dangerous for oncoming right-of-way pedestrians, then you can apply for the City Tree Service Request form on the city's website. Property owners are responsible for disposing of their private tree debris, which can be broken down, including with your trash. So by keeping your yard waste out of the street, you help keep Missoula safe, clean, and moving. And then they want to thank you for doing your part and serving your community. It may seem like a rehash, but many trees lost their limbs from both snow last weekend and the winds before. As the UDC is online for your viewing pleasure to changes and how your property is zoned for future development. Mind you, it seems like the city has targeted fringe neighborhoods and outskirts shy of the county border within the city for more high urban development. July 2nd is the deadline for the current permitting structures, with the UDC making itself mandatory by early June, where the city, county, and many begin their fiscal year budget talks. And of course, as of now, the city hasn't held any budget and finance committee meetings, which usually kicks off as early as this month, if sometimes even in February. They did some quarter responses trying to update the budget and figure out how much money was made through grants and how much money was spent. And it's just one of the things is that UDC really just kind of put a lot of the things on the back burner, a lot of people's minds. So budget and finance is one of the meetings that they'll be talking about moving forward when they start talking about the fiscal year for 2027, which gets approved in August of this summer. So look out for that. But up next, we got some programs airing on MCAT. These are some of the programs that people request, various nonprofits and organizations hosted here in Missoula, wanting to kind of show people and educate people of what's going on here in around the Missoula and of course the state of Montana. We always like to invite lots of people from all across the world. We are a university town, so we get a lot of interesting folks coming down to our university system, which sponsors a lot of these lectures, and a lot of organizations here in town also sponsor their own lecture series for folks to enjoy, and MCAT produces them. And without further ado, here are all the new programs that are airing this week on MCAT.
One program getting a lot of attention lately is the Housing Solutions Fund.
Yes.
Can you explain how it works
Sure.
and why small, flexible funding can make such a big difference for people trying to stay housed?
Great question. The HSF, as we call it, Housing Solutions Fund, is a flexible fund that caseworkers can access on behalf of their clients to either get them into housing or keep them housed. So many families and individuals in our community are one disaster away from not being able to pay the rent, spiraling into homelessness, one dead car battery, one domestic violence, one illness. The HSF is available so that a family, a household can work with a caseworker and say, this is the barrier that is preventing me from getting into housing or that is threatening my housing. So.
got to do something with our bank. We would like to stay in our current location with a new facility. We would like to do something more than a 2-story building to serve our needs, or maybe even a 3-story building to serve our needs. We would like to do a 6 or a 9-story building, but we have to have parking. In order to do that, will you create an urban renewal district and joint venture with the parking commission and build a parking structure? We managed to do that. The parking structure is totally, our part of the debt service is completely covered by First Interstate's property taxes in that one project.
Given this impact, it's especially important that the Forest Service understands how this potential action could impact Montanans' everyday lives. Yet, since the Forest Service announced this past summer their plan to rescind the roadless rule, they have not yet held a single public meeting on the topic. To address this, several groups have come together to create an opportunity for you all to provide feedback. These groups include, they're up on the screen here, Wild Montana, Business for Montana's Outdoors, Backcountry Hunters and Anglers.
And as we built those plans, we depended on the roadless rule. And that was created in 2001. There were over 600 public meetings in the creation of that rule. Tens of thousands of people commented and were involved in that. The fact that the Forest Service now wants to rescind the rule without any public meetings doesn't mean the Forest Service wants to do that. That's the politicians that are making that decision. So this whole thing is a political decision. And for the first time, unfortunately, in the history of our country, we have a president who doesn't care one bit about nature and wild things. And
that's a really great narrative. And all of these artworks, you could come up and read them and kind of learn about what they're about. But these 3 yayas, I really like to focus on women, if you haven't noticed, it's just kind of what are the matriarchs and the women's stories, these strong leader women from their time. And so these women, they helped to create the first tribally owned wilderness. And so there was like 2 before that, or a couple before that, like in Florida and up in Canada, of having like a wilderness area, designated area for restoration efforts. But this was the very first tribally owned land that ended up being matched with the United States government. And so they were able to save this entire area from a lot of logging companies and kind of just trash and things that were just, they started to see the changes in their time, and they wanted to prevent change in those areas. So the grizzly bears and all these different animals that utilized that area would have a safe place. So preserve it.
Hey guys, welcome back. Let's talk about some movies that are coming out this week, and it's time for Pre-Critic, where I prejudge a movie based on absolutely nothing but my judgment towards basic story structure and how movies kind of portray themselves as, yeah, I kind of saw that coming. So here we got yet another iteration of the sun is dying and we got to save the sun. So Sunshine did it. Sun is dying. Science is the only way to fix it. We'll forget this movie Sunshine exists because our sun is sick and we have to send Ryan Gosling's character to fight the sun, I guess. But he meets a rock crab alien and begins to lean heavily on their science to put their heads together to save the world and potentially the galaxy. Enjoy this kind of buddy alien comedy drama thing, as the sun is sick and so are the suns around there, and the author of The Martian that had Matt Damon stranded on Mars is now doing this book as we get into deep space mission that goes wrong in all the right ways. So this is just another movie that a lot of people are going to be talking about for quite some time. A lot of people already like it as is. So we're going to throw it on over to a movie that you might not like. Ready or Not, Here I Come, which is a sequel to a movie called Ready or Not, which essentially is a hide-and-seek battle royale, last one standing kind of thing. And you know what's kind of left alone in those kind of first movies where like most people are kind of like, everyone's gone, how do you do a follow-up? Well, we just introduce a wider world to make it crazier. So they kind of like doubled down on this idea where the first movie is always kind of like a horror movie, and then they kind of change it all together. They did this with Happy Death Day, which is a Blumhouse, in which the first movie was like, oh, it's like Groundhog Day, but there's a killer. And then the next movie was just like, well, it's like Groundhog Day, but it's a different dimension, so we're going to get second chances. And then another example is a prime example of what they did with Megan, the robot AI companion. They essentially, the first movie was pure horror, and it's like, oh, whoa, AI, so like all this kind of stuff. And then the second one is like, we got to stop this AI by teaming up with this other AI, but it's an action movie. So we're doing what the T2 did, which we reprogrammed it, but it's not really reprogrammed. So that's basically what Ready or Not is kind of about. It's like where she kind of like is alone, but then she brings her estranged sister along in her weird death game, and it's basically just a hunt or be hunted kind of situation. I don't know what to expect from it, but if you like the first one, you'll tolerate the second one. The Pout Pout Fish, or as I like to call it, Inside Out Fish Edition. When you have an animated movie about an old man at the end of his life team up with a plucky young fish to save their home from an evil thing before it's too late. This odd couple animated movie will most likely teach you the meaning of found family among the pouting fish who wants to be left alone. So it's a lot like Up with Carl Fredricksen, where he meets when push comes to shove, it will probably help the little annoying dude, grumpy old man, and their adoptive kids. I assume it's, they did it with The Mandalorian, they did it with a bunch of other things. And I also assume that these actors were stuck indoors during the pandemic, and the movie is just finally coming out after 4 or 5 years of animation hell. So enjoy some mindless kid entertainment that will get your kids to shut up for maybe an hour and a half while you watch Hail Mary, because your kid's like, I don't want to watch Hail Mary. And it's like, why not? Don't you like space? It's like, I like dumb fish movies. Okay, great. Those are the movies that are coming out this weekend for you guys. And up next, we have a dub and stuff from the 1942 movie, The Backroom Boy.
Breakfast time. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, maybe I should have made more bacon for this. Oh, well. Eggs are gonna have to do. Well, what else can I get here? Well, if I only had some of that sweet tea and everything.
Professor! Here, I got your bread.
Oh, thank you? Where'd she come from? Did she come with the house? Am I hallucinating her? Excuse me, oh!
Here's your sweet tea you ordered. One for you, and one for me.
You really didn't have to do that. Like, any of it.
Child labor laws.
Well, I appreciate everything that you're doing up until this point, but I think you should,
My little sister's being a real piece of work.
Oh, your little sister. Does she work here too?
Yeah, she's the manager.
Your younger sister's the manager?
She's a real slave driver.
Well, you'd think you'd be the manager, clearly.
You would think that, wouldn't you?
Well, yeah, no offense. It's just clear that you're older and probably doing a lot more work than she is.
That's what I get for going to Cabo.
You missed one season at the Airbnb and they demote you? That's unfair. That's not right.
Well, girls got to pay her bills.
Well, have you thought about going to education? You can take the summers off all you want. You really deserve a break.
Well, there's no rest for the wicked. Say that to my 3-year-old sister.
The person who manages this place is 3 years old?
Excuse me, I'm on my lunch break. Say, what brings you by in our neck of the woods?
I work in forestry.
Huh, neck of the woods. I didn't know I made a pun. That's pretty funny.
I usually make those jokes.
Ew, don't be a joke hog.
Have you heard about the stump and the toothpick?
No, is this going anywhere?
Oh, is that the painting of this lighthouse we're staying in? Huh. It's kind of funny what they put Airbnb in. So that's the castle. I'm studying how trees relate.
Are you going to be much longer?
Well, no, I don't suppose I will, but just a couple days.
Thank you very much. You make my job a lot easier.
Oh, do you know where I can leave my leaves?
You brought leaves inside the Airbnb?
Yeah, why?
We'll probably have to charge extra for the cleanup.
Oh, well,
Non-negotiable.
Well, I'll gladly pay it.
All right, that's nice. Well, there are not many trees by the lighthouse. Heck, not even many trees by the castle that you want to visit, so I don't see what the whole deal is.
Well, that's precisely it. I'm trying to study coastal trees. It's more about landslides and how fjords react to the ocean. Oh, speaking of which, I gotta get going. I'm almost late.
I don't really need the backstory, but whatever.
Well, I've tapped a couple trees to collect their sap. You wouldn't mind a couple trees, right? Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to.
It's okay.
Yeah,
I
to
will
leave
call
your
the
hair.
police.
Well, thank you kindly for not calling them. I'm on here for the endeavor of science. All sorts of wonderful things are going to be studied from here.
Good for you.
You'll see.
Last word.
Hey guys, welcome back. We're pretty much almost wrapped up in the show already, so let's dive into some news that are happening in and around. Of course, one of the bigger things that are happening in the state of Montana is that there's going to do that No Kings rally against, of course, the President Donald Trump, and our own Governor Greg Gianforte and his administration was seeking ways to prevent the permitting process to have a protest in Helena's capital on the 28th of this month. But what had happened after the fact is that they finally pushed back, and they got enough pressure to put on this to essentially allow them to open up the ability to protest in Helena on that particular date. And at the same time, when you think about it, First Amendment, right to gather, all that kind of stuff, you need a permit to use public space. So, I understand that there's probably things in place that people have normalized, but when you think about it, you should be allowed to gather free. Anyways, so as we move forward, the big resignation from the counterterrorism head Joe Kent, who essentially burned any bridge with MAGA and Trump, also included him going on the Tucker Carlson show to explain how we basically had no reason to actually go to war with Iran except for the sphere of influence that was surrounding Trump and a lot of the cronies around him to force his hand in going in, because in a lot of ways Israel is going to attack anyways, and U.S. already has this idea that they're already supporting them. Much like how Major League Taylor Greenland left because of the shadiness of the Epstein files, which Trump ran on the release of, came about after the Iran war, which he also was saying that we're going to get into a war with Iran, and if you elected him, we would not go to war with Iran. Kent wrote, quote, Iran posed no imminent threat to our nation, and it is clear that we started this war due to pressure from Israel and its powerful American lobby, which is the first time someone within the Trump administration and sphere to directly call out the administration for going to war, with the promise from President Donald Trump to not get involved in wars at the top of his campaign promises. A year ago, in nominating Kent, Trump praised him for a man who had hunted down terrorists and criminals his entire adult life. However, he released a statement in reaction, quote, didn't think Iran was a threat. We don't need those people, which is definitely his current position on the Iran war moving forward. Kent has personal beef with wars in the Middle East in general since after his first wife was killed in 2019 in a suicide bombing in Manbij, resulting in the first time leaving government work to write and advocate against wars. His resignation wasn't just a public declaration, but posted on social media for maximum damage to the administration's current handling of the Iran war, which many reported out of Iran shows resilience, with Sultan Al-Kumufi, a senior researcher at the Center for Conflict and Humanitarian Studies, says Israel appears to be continuing with the strategy of decapitating the regime figurehead in Iran, but notes that the establishment ruling system is still resilient. So he also mentioned that the Kurds have not made any major motions to take over Iran, which was supposed to be the local body, and there's a higher percentage of Kurds living in Iran looking to take advantage of the chaos, and Trump was hoping that Israel and they would back up the Kurds to help overthrow the regime. But as of right now, there's just not much going on in that regard. So as we get into more details, the administration has weaponized the FCC to threaten broadcasters who report on the Iran war that paints the current administration in a bad light. So even going so far as to reach out to U.S. allies in a very dismissive way, as the U.S. wants support for this war, tapping Germany, UK, France to help keep the trade routes open. Not to mention the Prime Minister of Japan visited the White House yesterday, with him basically, with them saying, hey, the Iran attack, you didn't really talk to us about it. It was quite a surprise. And then he tersely mentioned that Pearl Harbor was quite the surprise during Pearl Harbor. So a lot of stuff going on right there, and it's just kind of crazy. Just overall, China depends on these oil sales along with Japan, another U.S. ally. This week saw gas prices in Missoula meet up to $3.50 a gallon, and I've already just looked this morning. I saw it was probably like $3.60, someplace at $3.75. It's a month ago I saw about $2.75 a gallon. There are bottom lines of many Americans who have expected to have lower gas prices going into the Trump administration, yet another promise by the Trump administration to lower gas prices. It was one of the highest times during the Biden administration, but now we're looking on the point where we might even see $200 a barrel of oil. So overall, America has spent $30 billion on Ukraine, which actually, as of Tuesday, Iran costs to America is $23 billion, according to an online Iran war cost tracker. And so I'm sure, there's probably updated as of now, and now the Pentagon is asking the government for $200 billion to further the Iran conflict. And, and as we're, talking a little bit more about that, of course, I switched the stories around a little bit, but of course, as we're going to kind of bring it back to Montana, we're going to centralize on what's kind of happening with the Anaconda shooter. So Michael Paul Brown dropped on Montana Free Press expressing that Brown is unable to get the right medication, will be fit for trial in the murder of 4 people at a local bar. Brown had pleaded not guilty in September to separate counts of arson, homicide, theft, and evading law enforcement. In the remarks of the court, Anaconda Deer Lodge County Attorney Morgan Smith said that she and Brown's attorney had jointly filed a motion in mid-December to have the defendant undergo a medical health evaluation to determine his competency to move forward with the trial, but Smith said that Brown had not actually been admitted to the forensic unit at Warm Springs until roughly a month later on January 12th of this year. As outlined in the state law, a judge must approve the state's ability to involuntarily medicate someone so they may be found fit to stand trial. That step is authorized only if the Treatment Review Committee and a Special Medication Review Board of the Montana State Mental Hospital determines that the set of the criteria has been met. Sorry, that's Montana State Hospital. Mental health is one of those things that the law has very difficult working around, as whether or not the Brown is mentally competent to standard judgment to have special treatment based on his diagnosis. Because when you are breaking the law, they want to make sure that you are of sound mind and sound mind. So, because the idea of malice is another big part of how we interpret laws too, because sometimes you accidentally do things that are illegal versus things that are intentional and planned and premeditated type stuff. So that's a big problem when it comes to mental health, because in a lot of ways you just don't know when you look into it a little bit further whether this person was competent enough to know what they were doing. So that's part of the insanity plea back in the day. So from what the KPAX article articulated is that the servers being used will not require, hold on. All right. So the idea is that mental health is one of those things the law has very difficult working with, and special treatment. And of course, this next meeting on this, and so far it's one of the many delays that are moving this case forward. But the next meeting on this will be in May to determine this as well. And today, this afternoon, they're going to do a public group gathering in Bonner to talk about a new AI data center that's being proposed in one of the old sawmill districts in that particular area. So it's a startup AI. From what the KPAX article articulated, back to that story, is that the servers being used will not require fans for cooling and will use water internally, which means once they recycle the water to keep those servers cool. This is a smaller operation than the Bitcoin mining operation that caused many residents in the Bonner to get the county to ban these types of data centers. However, the owner, Mike Hazley, general manager of the mill site, said that this would create upwards of 20 jobs in this area for this small AI data center. Friends of Two Rivers is hosting a meeting about this proposal today from 3 to 5 p.m. at St. Anne Catholic Church in Bonner. Representatives from the mill, the data center, company CEO, and staff, and the county will be there to answer questions from the community. The first major setback for folks against the data center, as Northwestern Energy has influenced the Public Service Commission to ignore complaints and concerns. According to Missoula Current, in November, Earth Justice filed a complaint on behalf of a broad coalition, including advocates for seniors, citizens, for clean and affordable energy, and for social justice. The complaint said Northwestern Energy, the state's largest public utility, entered into letters of intent to provide as much as 1,400 megawatts of electricity to 3 data centers developers in Montana roughly double its current average. Northwestern Energy has since announced its decision with at least 11 entities regarding data center development, including ones in Montana. These are the kinds of fights that are happening on the back burners of a lot of places in Montana looking to expand the current administration's push for AI development, which requires a lot of power, and from other states that have had these data centers have been pushed on rural communities. The AI bubble is growing, and it's clear that all bets are on AI, and many communities like ours are taking the brunt of the national desire to expand those data centers. For the bottom line is that we got to compete with China. That's kind of like the big thing. But electricity bills are expected to jump from 8% to 25% nationwide by 2030 alone. However, state law requires PSC to continue. The data center won't have a negative impact on customers before serving them, but they have raised the rates just recently, so don't bet on that. So those are the things that are happening in and around the state of Montana. There's so much going on and everything like that. So if I go... So if we go over to some of the things that are happening more locally, the upcoming events and stuff like that. So let's talk about some events that are happening in Missoula. Conquering the Transition Zone Pickleball. This is a pickleball follow-up class at the Life Learning Center starting already kind of started around 8 a.m. They do these kind of classes that kind of get people engaged in many different kinds of things. These are kind of like a one-stop shop for pay per class kind of situation where you can just kind of expand your knowledge, maybe take a cooking class, maybe just get yourself out of the house, those kind of classes. And you might learn something. Life Learning Center, they're just off of 3rd Street, you can't miss them. They're that old school right next to the Sovereign Hope Church area. So anyways, other things that are happening is that the Glacier Challenge figure skating competition is already ongoing right now at the Glacier Ice Rink. Stroller Strides Mommy Me workout classes at Bonner Park daily from starting at 9:30 in Bonner Park. Not in Bonner near the Paxton School. Little Clubs Playgroup at the Sports Front at 10 a.m. This is an indoor fun for kids. Hey, weather's getting warmer out there, so while there's still time at family fun time at Mismo Gymnastics in the morning, our preschool playgroup at Roots Acre Sports Center. Those are some of the good ideas for indoor spaces, including Get Air, which is another great space besides the YMCA. If you're interested in getting a nice gym workout, climbing walls, and all sorts of fun things like that without having to worry about going outside. But as temperatures are starting to improve, I'll probably advertise a little bit less about those indoor activity spaces. Little Clubs Missoula Food Bank meal distributions, so starting at 10 a.m. this morning. This is a great way for people to get connected to this part community center / food bank for people to get access, not to mention for folks struggling with housing security. They have plenty of information for you guys there as well. It also operates as a quasi-shelter too. Lunch at the Missoula Senior Center at 11 a.m. They also do one at the Poverello Center. They have breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day, every single day of the year. Lunch at the Missoula Senior Center, however, is Monday through Friday. Butterfly release at the Missoula Butterfly House starting at 11 a.m. Yarns and watercolor here at the Missoula Public Library at 12 noon. This is a great way for people who wanted to stitch crochet or even just do some painting. This happens every Friday on the 4th floor of the Missoula Public Library. It's a big deal. Open wood shop at Home Resource. This seems like a weekly event happening at the Home Resource. Open wood shop is to encourage people to work with one of the woodworking and have some hands-on help. It's kind of like an open workshop, but they call it the Open Wood Shop. Brown Bag and Bones at the with paleontologist Jason T. Poole at the Montana Natural History Center starting at 1 p.m. This is a weekly event. All Abilities Art Club at Base at 1 p.m., a weekly event. Hands-on Science, Engineering at Spectrum Discovery. They use weekly events, but this is their particular subject this week is engineering. Adult Writers Group, so any kids interested in getting into literacy and improve their writing skills, they have it here at the library every Friday afternoon at 3:30 p.m. Predator feeding at 3:30 p.m. at the Missoula Butterfly House. Learn about how those insects consume each other. Learn computer animation with Blender here at the library here inside the studio of the MCAT Studios. You get to learn a little bit of computer animation with Blender. It's 3D animation. Maybe even create your own 3D thing that you can print out. Pot Sketch. At the Prod Sketch Preview exhibit, so you get a pre-screening of what's going to happen with their pot sketch at the Clay Studio of Missoula, where they do some clay works. Kids Night Out, Babysitting Night. Rattlesnake Elementary School is doing a group babysitting, so you can drop off your kids there and enjoy a night on the town Friday night here in Missoula. Last Voyage Pinball Tournament at Odd Pitch Brewing at 5:30 p.m. Tango Dance Party at the Montana Moonlight Studio at 6 p.m. dynamic universal pickleball rating event at the Lifelong Learning Center at 6 p.m. Elks Lodge is doing a bubblegum night market, and the whole idea of the community is a country is in a dark space right now, and then come together to a place where we connect, share ideas, safely express yourselves through art, fashion, and local culture at the Elks Lodge, kind of like a people's market starting tonight at 6 p.m. Planetarium show at 6 and 7 p.m. At sunsets across the solar system at the Payne Native American Center. The Young Shakespeare Trunk Show, they're doing Macbeth at MCT at 7 p.m. Usually these trunk shows are traveling artists. They're using the MCC space to do their iteration of Macbeth. Shakespeare is a public domain entity, so if you love Shakespeare and you want to do that kind of stuff, you can always start at an open mic and work your way up to these kind of trunk shows. Spring Equinox Cacao and Sound Journey, Sacred Alley, in honor of the equinox. They're doing a cacao chocolate ceremony at 7 p.m. Karaoke at the Jack Saloon at 7 p.m. Jazz Off the Rails at Leaf and Quiet, Saturday at 7 p.m. Marty Paws, which is the Wilma's big Animeals fundraising and adoption event. So if you're interested in everything cats and celebrating them, Marty Paws is their big event. They used to do another annual event, but Marty Paws has become their normal mainstay for their party, and it's going to be at the Wilma starting at 7 p.m. tonight. And Comedians with Disabilities Act, so they're doing a live recording with comedians with disabilities. They usually utilize BASE, another organization in which they do all abilities art classes, and invite comedians with disabilities to perform their act. And this is going to be at the Zootown Arts Community Center at 7 p.m. tonight. The Jive is going to be performed at the Old Post at 8 p.m. Tater Thoughts is going to be performing at Monk's, playing some electronic music, or rock music, sorry. The Spills is going to be at... let's see, what did I, it'll probably be, yes, it'll be at Union Club. The Spills will be at Union Club at 9 p.m. as things get a little bit warmer, and we're kind of still in the middle of college, so they always do like a Friday night and a Saturday night gig. Sicard, Hollow at the Top Hat, performing there at 10:30 p.m. to wrap up your Friday night as we jump into your Saturday. It looks like I'm definitely, I was hoping for a short show, but it looks like it's getting a little bit longer, so I'll try to get through this as fast as possible. But Hellgate Mineral Society is doing a 31st annual gem show at the Hilton Garden Inn, so it's part of their 31st annual mineral, they have fossil, bead, and lapidary show and sale, hosting the Northwest Federation of Mineralogical Society Convention. Whew, that's a mouthful right there. Anyways, line dancing at the Missoula Senior Center at 10 a.m. The Met Opera, Tristan and Isolde at the Roxy at 10 a.m. 5K beer run at the Old Bull Brewing at 11 a.m. Museum tour at Missoula Art Museum. Return to the Ice Age at Travelers Rest State Park. They usually do these winter storytellings at 11. They got story time here at the Missoula Public Library for young kids, starting at 11:30 a.m. Knife and tool sharpening workshop at Home Resource Community Room. MCAT Saturday drop-in every single Saturday at 1 p.m. Deer-resistant plants and trees, Karis Nursery at 2 p.m. So if you want to grow some deer-resistant plants, if you're worried about those deers eating your arborvitaes, you can go to Karis Nursery to do those kind of classes. Saturday, Tiny Tales at Missoula Public Library at 3 p.m. This is for kids who want to do activities and reading. D&D Guild for Teens at Missoula Public Library as well at 3 p.m. Dungeons and Dragons, anyone? Then we got Beginning Pottery at the Clay Studio of Missoula at 6 p.m. You got Bingo at the Odd Pitch at 6 p.m. You got Moon in the Sea at the Missoula Public Library, which is an original shadow puppet show created by Taylor Stein of the Wonder Gizmo and K-Rad of Sabretooth Studios, and they debut tonight at 7:30 p.m. with community-generated art activities starting at 6:30 p.m. here at the Missoula Public Library. Zozo at the Wilma is playing some rock music at 7 p.m. I totally butchered that name because I've never seen it before. Pixie and the Party Grass Boys and the Mandolin Hawthorne is going to be playing some country music at the Zach Saturday night at 7 p.m. Tom Catmull will be performing at Free Cycles with Love is a Dog from Nebraska at 7 p.m. Missoula Folklore Society Contra Dance, some folk dancing at the Elks Lodge Ballroom at 8 p.m. Dueling Pianos at Stave and Hoop at 8 p.m. John Wicks and the Jolada Pretend Hard Hugs at Monk's Bar, playing some rock music at 8 p.m. Westside Lanes is doing karaoke at 9 p.m. Much Like Charlie at 9 p.m. at Union Club, and DJ Chris Moon wraps up your Saturday at 10 p.m. And just as we're getting pretty much around the corner, we're at the tail end of the show. As we're talking about Sunday, they're doing a Sunday song and dance at Free Cycles at 10 a.m. They gather twice monthly in a rotating song leader to lift our voices, move bodies, and remember what it feels like to be fully alive. Free Cycles at 10 a.m. on Sunday. Also Sunday, you got the Stitch and Bitch at the Space at DIY Studio at 12 noon. Here in the DIY studio, Butterfly Release at the Butterfly House at 12:30. They do a bunch of those. They also have guided meditation early in the morning on Sundays. Five Valley Accordion Dance Jam at Missoula Aging Services. Looks like they're updating their title to make it more interesting. Bluebird and Bluebird Houses in the Rattlesnake at Missoula Public Library at 2 p.m. So if you're interested in bluebirds and everything Bluebird Houses in the Rattlesnake, you can come to the library and talk about it and have people talk at you about it. Family fun time, family fun clay day at Wildfire Ceramic Studios, not to be confused with Clay Studio Missoula. This is Wildfire Ceramic Studios doing their own family fun clay day at 3 p.m. on Sundays. Pinball tournament at Odd Pitch at 4. Dram Tough Trivia at 6 p.m. at the Dram Shop. Sunday Jazz at Draftworks. Studio M Presents Show and Shine at Zootown Event Center. Doom Scrolling with Mosquito and Minot is going to be at the Zac at 7 p.m. And Country Karaoke at the Sunrise Saloon at 8:30 p.m. Wrapping up your Sunday. So a lot of things happening, a lot of things going on. I'm going to end my show a little bit early so I can get to work on other projects I'm working on today as well. We're going to be doing a fun game night with the folks here at Missoula Public Library. We're doing a new show called MQuest, which will be premiering on MCAT sometime in the future to enjoy a group of us just kind of gathering up and doing some gaming. So that's pretty much it for me. I want to thank you guys for joining me, and for Wake Up Missoula, I'm Scott Ramp. I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend.